Hello there, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to World News Program, streaming to you live on All 24 News. I'm your host, Karim Zachary, and up next are the top stories. Palestinian resistance warns against a ground invasion of Rafah, jeopardizing prisoner exchange talks, and the EU cautions against such potential Zionist attack. 112 martyrs in 14 new Zionist massacres in a single day in Gaza. 3 patients from Al Amal Hospital perished due to oxygen blockage, and Nasser Medical Complex courtyard still targeted by Zionist snipers. Also ahead in our news, UNRWA admits wrongful dismissals amid unfounded Zionist claims. Commissioner acknowledges procedural lapses. And the IMF warns of global economic fallout from Middle East escalation and downgrades growth outlook for regional economies. The details after the break. Well, hello again and welcome to the details. First, let's have a look at the unfortunate unfolding events in Gaza. Over 25 Palestinians were killed and many injured in Zionist bombing of shelter in Rafah. International fears grow of possible ground invasion in the densely populated city, exacerbating the already dire humanitarian crisis. Osama Ayadi reports.
More than 4 months into the unabated Zionist aggression on the Gaza Strip, Rafah, the once safe haven for innocent residents, shatters under occupation forces' attacks, leaving the displaced with nowhere to go. Despite clear warnings from the UN regarding the dire humanitarian situation, the occupation has shown no mercy, unleashing further attack, resulting in multiple casualties.
We were sitting peacefully under God's protection, asleep, when suddenly we heard an explosion. Just as you see, we got up to see and found a car with 4 martyrs inside. The strike occurred suddenly after we had been sitting quietly.
In Khan Yunis area, a Zionist airstrike hit a car on Saturday, claiming the lives of 3 individuals. The Palestinian civil defense swiftly responded, dousing the aflame wreckage with water and sand in the Sultan neighborhood of Rafah.
God willing, nothing will happen, because if the Jews enter Rafah with this too much population, massacres will occur. They must find a solution for Rafah to prevent a major massacre.
Overnight in Khan Yunis still, airstrikes by Zionist forces that also killed at least 17 people. Explosions reverberated through a camp for the displaced where over 1 million Palestinians are packed, bracing for a full-scale offensive in Gaza's Rafah. Disregarding all international law and humanitarian conventions, the Zionist leadership continues its merciless rampage, perpetrating war crimes against defenseless civilians and reducing once thriving communities to rubble across the Strip. Despite the blatant disregard for human life, the international community remains inert, standing idly by as innocent individuals fall victim to cold-blooded violence.
According to Palestinian resistance, any ground attack by Israeli forces on Rafah could derail negotiations on prisoner exchange. Al-Aqsa TV cites Hamas leader accusing Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of avoiding exchange deal by committing another genocide and a new humanitarian disaster in Rafah. The same source added that what Netanyahu and his Nazi forces did not achieve in more than 4 months, it will not achieve no matter how long the war lasts. European Union's Foreign and Security Policy Commissioner Josep Borrell cautioned against potential repercussions of the Zionist attack on Rafah in southern Gaza. Borrell emphasized on X platform that such an attack would trigger a humanitarian crisis and strain relations with Egypt. He asserted that negotiations are crucial to halt bloodshed in Gaza.
I reiterate the warning of many EU member states that the Israeli attack on Rafah will lead to an untold humanitarian catastrophe and serious tensions with Egypt. Resuming negotiations to free the hostages and suspending hostilities is the only way to avoid bloodshed.
And in the last 24 hours, 112 Palestinians have been killed and 173 others injured due to intense Zionist airstrikes across Gaza Strip. The government's media office reports a staggering death toll of 28,176 martyrs and at least 67,784 injured since October 7th. Most casualties are women and children, with thousands still trapped under rubble, hindered by occupation forces from receiving any medical aid. And as you followed in our headlines, 3 patients died in Khan Yunis Hospital due to week-long blockade on oxygen by Zionist forces. World Health Organization expressed concern over hospital raids and detainment of patients and staff. Here's Zahra Farjani with the story.
The cowardly Zionist forces show no compassion, shame or red lines in their brutal assault on Gaza. They've targeted hospitals like Al-Amal Hospital in Khan Yunis, causing extensive damage, detaining healthcare workers and patients, confiscating assets and obstructing vital medical supplies. This incursion has sparked widespread condemnation and raised serious concerns about healthcare in the region.
The reports of raid into Al-Amal Hospital in Khan Yunis, Gaza, detention of health personnel and patients, damage of the facility, and the confiscation of hospital assets and personal belongings are extremely concerning. We urge for patients and health workers immediate release. Health personnel, patients, and facilities must be protected at all times.
The Palestinian Red Crescent Society has voiced profound concern over the deliberate targeting of Gaza's hospitals by the occupation forces, demanding international intervention to safeguard medical facilities.
For the 18th day in a row, the siege of Al-Amal Hospital for the Palestinian Red Crescent in the city of Khan Yunis continues. There are very violent clashes now in the besieged hospital, and as you can hear now, we are exposed to direct casualties in the hospital buildings. Coordination of oxygen for the sick and wounded continues. There are 3 critical processes that cannot be performed without oxygen.
The Zionist war machine shows no mercy, tightening the siege on Nasser Hospital and making its surroundings and courtyard a battleground. The World Health Organization has sounded the alarm, reiterating calls for an immediate ceasefire.
Yesterday's WHO mission to Nasser Hospital was denied. We're deeply concerned about the safety of patients and health personnel due to the intensifying hostilities in the vicinity of the hospital.
The ongoing raids on hospitals and medical centers, including Al-Amal and Nasser hospitals, represent a concerted effort by the occupation to render these vital institutions inoperative and transform them into military targets. This aggressive tactic underscores the Zionist entity's blatant disregard for international humanitarian laws, aiming to erase all signs of life in Gaza.
A Palestinian was shot and killed by a Zionist sniper at the Nasser Medical Complex in Khan Yunis, Gaza. Occupation forces maintain a 20-day siege on the hospital, targeting Palestinians inside and hindering medical teams' movement. Snipers also occupy surrounding homes, firing into the complex's courtyards, aggravating shortages of food and water. The Palestinian Foreign Ministry blames the international community for Zionist occupation's ongoing crimes of genocide and forced displacement in Gaza. They assert that Netanyahu and the Zionist Work Council persist due to international negligence towards Gaza aggression. The ministry highlights international failure to implement protective measures as evidence of being hostage to the Zionist occupation.
Netanyahu dares to continue targeting and persecuting civilians under false pretexts, and mainly under the cover of international inability to oblige him by the force of law to protect civilians. Netanyahu continues his devastating war on the Gaza Strip for the 128th day in a row, without the international community noticing any serious change in the behavior of the occupation forces towards civilians, and without any response to all international demands, appeals, and resolutions in this regard. For countries to be satisfied with the formula, we want to do such and such, without any practical translation of any of what they say, means that the international position remains hostage and hijacked by the Israeli side, and even allows Netanyahu to complete the mass massacres and transform the entire Gaza Strip into a geographical area unsuitable for human life and without residents, if possible.
And as you followed in our headlines, the UNRWA Commissioner General Filipe Lazzarini acknowledged that proper legal procedures were not followed in the dismissal of 9 employees. This admission comes after unfounded Zionist allegations led 16 countries, including the United States, to freeze roughly $500 million in funding to the agency.
In fact, they were separated without following the necessary legal procedures, because at the time, I felt that the agency's reputation was not the only thing at stake. Its ability to continue its work and provide essential humanitarian assistance was fully dependent on not making such a decision.
Moving on to public opinion now. On Sunday, crowds of Palestinians and Lebanese took to the streets of Beirut in a protest supporting Palestinians in Gaza and denouncing Zionist war crimes. Demonstrators waving Palestinian flags and chanting anti-Zionist slogans congregated at the United Nations headquarters in central Beirut.
نناشد جميع الدول العربية والأجنبية.
We call on all Arab and Western countries to stop the war and massacres against the Palestinian people. We want peace and demand only the right to return to Palestine. Those children don't know anything about war. They are 10, 5, and 6 years old. They were murdered not knowing why.
Similarly, tens of thousands of Moroccans joined a protest in Rabat, demanding an end to normalization between the Moroccan government and the Zionist entity. Organized by the National Action Group for Palestine, demonstrators gathered at Bab el-Had before marching towards Parliament headquarters. They voiced demands to stop Zionist aggression, criticized international silence, and called for the closure of the so-called Israeli liaison office in Rabat.
Today, the Moroccan people take to the street to say once again, as they have said hundreds of times in previous marches, get our country out of the swamp of normalization. There is no single free Moroccan who accepts for our country to have any type of relations with a Zionist group of criminal bandits.
In another matter, the IMF warns of global economic fallout from escalating Middle East tensions. Director Kristalina Georgieva highlights rising shipping costs and reduced Red Sea mobility. She anticipates worsening Palestinian economy due to ongoing Gaza aggression, stressing the need for lasting peace for economic change.
The expansion of the conflict in the Middle East region may exacerbate the economic damage at the global level. The impact of the conflict in the Middle East at the global level is manifested in high shipping costs. The volume of traffic through the Red Sea has decreased by about 50% this year, according to the fund's PortWatch data.
Algeria and Turkey reaffirmed their commitment to enhancing cooperation across various sectors and advancing ongoing projects and partnerships. Algerian Prime Minister Nabil Arbawi met with Turkish Ambassador Mehmet Mojahed Kujuk Yilmaz at the government palace, expressing satisfaction with the strong bilateral relations and aiming to bolster projects and partnership activities. Both sides also condemned Zionist aggression, genocide, and displacement against Palestinians, aligning on shared concerns. In other regional news, I'm saying the Libyan Supreme Council of State reviewed a report on the United Nations mission in Libya under Abdullah Bathili's presidency. The second Vice President Omar Khalid Al-Obeidi discussed security and recent development with the National Security Committee, focusing on stability, political affairs, and advancing the political process. They also examined the annual report for the Deterrence and Counterterrorism Service for the 2023 year. The political crisis in Senegal continues, and the death toll climbed to 3 after clashes erupted between police and demonstrators. The protest occurred following the announcement of elections delay, which sparked concerns over the stability of the country. Islam Sid reports.
Another death was reported in Senegal on Sunday amidst ongoing protests against the president's decision to delay an election to choose his successor. Sporadic demonstrations persisted over the weekend, with nationwide protests planned for early next week. The postponement occurring just 3 weeks before the scheduled February 25 vote has ignited nationwide protests and clashes between demonstrators and police. With the public outcry escalating, both the West African regional bloc and foreign powers have voiced concerns urgent prompt elections. Opposition lawmakers and presidential candidates who reject the delay have filed legal challenges, pledging not to recognize President Sall after his original mandate expires in early April.
There's only one date, February 25th, 2024. We're not negotiating, we're not discussing, we're not postponing. It's one date, and we're sticking to it.
If President Macky Sall doesn't restore power to us on April 3rd, we will set up a parallel government of national unity.
In response, the ruling Alliance for the Republic called for dialogue. During a press conference, several alliance officials believe the crisis was provoked by opposition MPs.
There are indeed upheavals linked to misunderstandings and deliberate manipulation by certain political actors and elements of civil society. But all of this will be resolved through inclusive dialogue. We call on all the vital forces of this country through the Republican Task Force to come together around what is essential. Should we dialogue after chaos, or should we dialogue before chaos? Today we face many challenges in the Assembly, but whose fault is it? We need to be consistent. The opposition prevented the National Assembly, a place of expression, dialogue and debate, from doing its job.
The parliamentary-backed postponement bill extends President Sall's tenure until his successor is installed, setting a new election date for December 15. Amid opposition challenges and international concerns, the nation faces a critical moment, highlighting the imperative for inclusive dialogue, for stability and democracy.
Still with Africa-related news, the UAE Ministry of Defense confirms the deaths of 3 Emirati soldiers and 1 Bahraini officer in an attack in Mogadishu, with 2 others injured. The incident occurred at Gordon Base, as reported through the ministry's X platform account. And in the Middle East, the Jordanian army confirms the crash of a training aircraft resulted in the deaths of 2 pilots. According to a military source, the Royal Jordanian Air Force's training aircraft crashed during a training session at King Hussein Air Base in Mafraq, northern Jordan. The casualties, a major and a captain, were transported to Al Hussein Medical City in Amman. And in other news, Alexander Stubb of the center-right National Coalition Party clinched victory in Finland's presidential election on Sunday, narrowly defeating Liberal Green Party member, that's Pekka Haavisto, who conceded a defeat. Stubb, a pro-European and staunch supporter of Ukraine, has taken a tough stance towards Russia. With 99.7% of ballots counted, Stubb secured 51.6% of the votes, while Haavisto received 48.4%, according to Justice Ministry data.
So we are very excited, and of course, very pleased that we are now heading this moment. It's been a wonderful campaign. We've been traveling all around Finland nearly a half year, and very, very nice, very energetic campaign.
And in other topical news, top Western officials criticized former President Donald Trump on Sunday after he suggested the U.S. might not protect NATO allies who aren't spending enough on defense from a potential Russian attack. White House spokesperson Andrew Bates called Trump's comments appalling and unhinged. During a meeting in South Carolina, Donald Trump threatens if he returns to the White House to no longer guarantee the protection of NATO countries against Russia if they do not pay their share, asserting even that he would encourage Moscow to attack them.
Any suggestions that allies will not defend each other undermines all of our security, including that of US, and puts the American and European soldiers at increased risk.
Encouraging invasions of our closest allies by murderous regimes is appalling and unhinged, and it endangers American national security, global stability, and our economy at home.
One of the presidents of a big country stood up and said, well, sir, if we don't pay and we're attacked by Russia, will you protect us? I said, you didn't pay? You're delinquent? He said, yes, let's say that happened. No, I would not protect you. In fact, I would encourage them to do whatever the hell they want. You got to pay.
And during the same occasion, an election rally in South Carolina on Saturday, Trump welcomed the rejection by the U.S. Congress of a proposed immigration system reform law. He pledged to carry out extensive deportation operations if re-elected as President of the United States.
On day one, I will terminate every open border policy of the Biden administration, and we will begin the largest domestic deportation operation in American history. We have no choice.
More stories making headlines around the globe with Sofia Kinturi in the News in Brief.
Hundreds of thousands of people participated in rallies across Iran on Sunday to commemorate the 45th anniversary of the 1979 Islamic Revolution. This event marks the overthrow of the monarch and the establishment of the Islamic rule under Ayatollah Khamenei. The $23 billion agreement was concluded as Turkey's parliament approved Sweden's long-awaited NATO membership. In response to this development, the United States granted its approval for the sale of F-16 fighter jets to Turkey. Hundreds of supporters of former Pakistani Prime Minister Imran Khan's party staged a protest against election results in Karachi on Sunday. The interim government of Pakistan attributed the delay in vote counting to communication issues arising from a mobile internet outage on election day. This outage, implemented for security reasons, according to authorities, raised concerns among human rights groups and foreign governments. The Philippine Coast Guard accused on Sunday China of engaging in dangerous and blocking maneuvers near Scarborough Shoal in the South China Sea during a patrol this month. Guatemalan authorities reported the seizure of half ton of cocaine concealed in a container arriving from Costa Rica. Francisco Jimenez, the Guatemalan Interior Minister, stated that 525 packages were found, totaling approximately 550 kilograms of cocaine. The discovery took place in Puerto Quetzal, where the illicit drugs were uncovered.
Finally, to the AFCON 2023, the host Côte d'Ivoire team champion actually secured the competition, I'm saying. Well, that's the end. Excuse us for the technical problem. Thank you for tuning in and take care.